We only met when we were working, because we lived different lives and miles apart. I, as you know, have a two-room flat. He had a large farm with a wife, 2 kids, dogs, cats, and a mother-in-law.
For more than a decade, Wilfrid Bramble and Harry H. Corbett brought laughter into millions of British homes as the unforgettable rag and bone duo of Steptoe and Son. Their chemistry on screen seemed effortless. The wily, cantankerous father and the frustrated, socially ambitious son locked in endless bickering. Yet behind the cameras, the partnership that made them household names was one of tension, pride, and growing resentment. Bound together by fame, but divided by personality and ambition, their off-screen relationship mirrored their characters more than either man would have liked to admit. What began as mutual respect between two talented actors slowly evolved into a toxic professional marriage haunted by ego, alcohol, and regret. The early spark.
I brought Abigail home for a very quick dinner, Tessie.
You dirty little devil.
That's a coffee.
Strange-looking beast.
That's my father. Oh, our horse. It is a Stubbs.
This Rembrandt. And this is a lousy
Bedpater.
low trick.
I'll make the coffee.
When Steptoe and Son first aired in 1962, it revolutionized the British sitcom. Written by Ray Galton and Alan Simpson, the show dared to mix tragedy and comedy, exploring class tension, loneliness, and unfulfilled dreams through the lives of 2 junk dealers. As Albert and Harold Steptoe, Wilfrid Bramble and Harry H. Corbett were an inspired pairing. Bramble, an experienced stage actor from Dublin's Abbey Theatre, played the conniving, self-pitying father with a grubby charm that only he could deliver. Corbett, a graduate of Joan Littlewood's Radical Theatre workshop, brought depth and realism to Harold, infusing the character's anger and longing with method-trained intensity. Off-camera, their differences were as sharp as their performances. Bramble was refined, dapper, and eccentric, a closeted homosexual who loved opera and fine antiques. Corbett was earthy, working-class, and direct, a former Royal Marine with a fiery temper and socialist ideals. They came from opposite worlds and practiced different styles of acting. Bramble was old school, relying on precision and technique, while Corbett was emotional, method-driven, and restless for authenticity. Despite this divide, something clicked between them. Their on-screen tension gave the show its bite, but audiences couldn't get enough of their barbed exchanges and tragic comic chemistry. At first there was camaraderie. Bramble affectionately called Corbett H, while Corbett returned the warmth by referring to his co-star as Wilf. They shared the thrill of newfound fame, mobbed by fans wherever they went, and even received awards together, publicly praising one another with genuine affection. In 1963, when they accepted a Variety Club award, Bramble beamed as he called Corbett a terrific chap, and Corbett teasingly patted his shoulder. But beneath that mutual respect lay an imbalance waiting to crack. Corbett, ambitious and serious about his craft, feared being seen forever as Harold, a role he increasingly resented. Bramble, older and more complacent, was content with the steady success. As the years went on, that difference in ambition slowly drove them apart. By the late 60s, pressure from the show's immense popularity began to show. Critics expected brilliance every week, and the scripts grew darker, heavier, and more emotionally demanding. Corbett worried his career was being swallowed by a single role, while Bramble found it harder to cope with the physical and mental strain of shooting. When the series returned in 1970 after a brief hiatus, the friendly warmth between them had cooled. Galton would later remark, something was going sour. Tensions behind the scenes.
Worth 300.
It's a sniff at 750. It's got to be worth 2 or 3,000. I mean, a site alone is worth of that. 750. Well, we can't get hold of that kind of money.
It's easy enough in this game. The bank gives it to you.
As the show entered its second run in the 70s, the working relationship between Bramble and Corbett deteriorated. Bramble, by now in his 60s, had developed a serious drinking problem. His habit of downing gin before breakfast and soaking his false teeth in scotch became a running joke among crew members, though Corbett found it anything but funny. On set, Bramble often flubbed his lines or arrived late, leaving Corbett to steady the scenes through improvisation. David Croft, the acclaimed sitcom producer behind shows like Dad's Army, once visited the Steptoe set and witnessed the imbalance firsthand. He later described how Bramble, quote, was a poor study and would fluff and change his lines in a pretty chaotic way, forcing Corbett to adapt constantly, gathering scenes back together and delivering them cleanly. Corbett, meanwhile, grew increasingly frustrated as what he saw as the waste of his dramatic talent. Trained to tackle Shakespeare and serious social dramas, he found the repetitive nature of sitcom life draining. Although he respected the script's intelligence, he feared he'd never escape Harold's shadow. Fans called him Harold on the street, unable to separate him from the role. Even his wife, Maureen, later recalled he'd come home deflated after filming, feeling he'd become trapped in someone else's skin. Still, the actors maintained an uneasy truce for the sake of the show. When it finally ended in 1974, it should have been a relief. Instead, both men found themselves haunted by the show. The public refused to accept them in other roles. The Australian tour disaster.
Are you fed up with being identified always as the Sun?
No, I wish I was. No, it's very fun.
But how typecast did you get? Because we read all the time that actors are typecast and they're out of work for years and they can't do another job.
Yes, that's true. I've been typecast. I wouldn't say I couldn't do another job. I've done several stage plays and various other things, and I even had to get out of the country and go to Australia.
3 years after the show's end, both men found themselves at a professional crossroads. Offers had dried up and their savings were dwindling. In 1977, an offer arrived for a lucrative stage tour of Australia and New Zealand, a live Steptoe and Son production called Steptoe and Son Down Under. Neither was enthusiastic about resurrecting the old roles, but the paycheck was impossible to refuse. Initially, the reunion seemed promising. They were welcomed warmly in Australia, where the sitcom had developed a loyal following. Corbett arrived with his wife and 2 young children, eager to turn the trip into a working holiday. Bramble, traveling alone, appeared frail and anxious. Without his longtime partner Yusuf bin Mat-Saman for company, he turned to alcohol to cope with homesickness. At first, they managed to maintain civility. Bramble even joined Corbett's family on sightseeing trips, and the camaraderie briefly returned. But the tour schedule was brutal. 8 shows a week across long distances, with repetitive material padded by tired old jokes. For Corbett, who still yearned for serious acting, it felt demeaning. For Bramble, it was physically punishing. He began drinking even more heavily, showing up late, missing cues, and snapping at stagehands. The real trouble started when Bramble's behavior became unpredictable. He once refused to perform altogether, leaving Corbett to improvise the show alone before a bewildered audience. On another night, he kicked a drunken fan off the stage mid-performance, sending her tumbling into the stalls. Corbett was furious, but tried to keep the peace for the sake of the company. His wife Maureen often acted as mediator, gently coaxing Bramble into compliance when tempers flared. Quote, "If Wilfred hadn't had a terribly good night," she later recalled, "he used to bite everybody's head off." Things reached a breaking point when Bramble insulted Corbett's family. Quote, "You and your effing kids," he snarled one night. Corbett, incensed, grabbed him by the collar and hissed, "Never my children." The Christchurch incident.
How do you think it's changed over the years?
I don't know, really. Neither do I.
Not really.
Different words.
Do you think the relationship between, say, you and Harry, playing Harold, your son, has it changed in any way at all? Have you maintained the same sort of tempo all the way through?
I think we've tried, haven't we? No, I think what you'd say is the outside world has changed. The permissive age has gone further along the line, and we've just adapted with it. That's about all you can say. But our relationship still stays the same. I hate him.
Yeah. When you came back, one of the press comments was that the only change that they could notice was that you'd grown sideburns in order to become more trendy and keep up with your left-wing friends.
Hey, watch it, crotchet. Just because mine are white.
By the time the tour reached New Zealand, Bramble's drinking had spiraled completely out of control. He was homesick, lonely, and exhausted. During a promotional radio interview in Christchurch in 1978, he delivered the final blow to his public reputation. When asked about his impressions of the city, Bramble exploded, "I hate your effing cathedrals, and I hate your effing town, and it's the lowest place I've been in all my life." The microphones went dead, the hosts sat frozen, and Corbett, mortified, looked as though he wished the floor would open up beneath him. The outburst caused a national scandal. Bramble narrowly avoided deportation, and the pair were forced to finish the tour in near silence, keeping their heads down until they could flee back to Sydney. To his credit, Bramble later apologized profusely to Corbett and his wife, even gifting Maureen an opal necklace in gratitude for her patience. Brief reunion and final farewells.
What are you doing?
I'm watering the garden. I'm trying to clean the place up.
That ugly Maureen bird coming again, eh?
She's not ugly.
What's this stuff?
Ajax Creamy Cleanser.
What's wrong with our other Ajax?
Peter, there is nothing wrong with that other cleanser. This is a special Creamy Ajax.
Back in Britain, both actors tried to move on. Bramble gave interviews downplaying the feud, boasting that he'd, quote, stayed the course, while Corbett quietly returned to smaller television roles. To everyone's surprise, they briefly reunited in 1978 for a BBC radio sketch titled Scotch on the Rocks, a light-hearted Steptoe parody tied to the World Cup. It was a short, pleasant experience, proof that with some distance, they could still work together professionally. Then in 1981, they were reunited for a Kenco coffee commercial. The ad was a hit, reigniting public nostalgia for the duo. On March 21, 1982, Harry H. Corbett suffered a fatal heart attack at just 57, the day before Bramble's 69th birthday. When news reached him, Bramble reportedly burst into tears. He told a journalist, "We always got on terribly well together." Whether that was self-deception or a final act of kindness, no one could say. In 1985, Bramble succumbed to cancer. His funeral was attended only by 6 people. It was a quiet end for a man